Welcome to today's RDBA Facebook Live discussion. I'm so happy you could join us. And I hope you were able to attend our first RDBA virtual experience a couple weeks ago, and there will be more. If you haven't yet completed your attendee survey, please do, so that we can be sure that we're delivering the programs and the topics that are the most important to you. Throughout today's discussion, I'll be monitoring the chat on Facebook. So actually, I'll be looking over there at that monitor every once in a while. So I am paying attention, but I'm looking to see what you're going to be writing as well. And please type in your questions as we go. Don't wait to the end, because we want to make sure that the conversation is lively and we keep going. Today's discussion, it's time for retail RDs to own your health and wellness strategy. Annette, let's get started.
Thanks, Phil. And we're thrilled today to have Lisa Coleman, who is the Director of Healthy Living, Health and Wellness at Giant with us. So thanks, Lisa, for joining us. And we also have Niki Toscani, who is the Wellness Manager at Zallie-Somerset group of ShopRite stores. So Lisa and Niki, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, we're so happy to be here. Thank you.
Good.
Yes, thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, so let's get into the discussion. So Lisa, I'm going to throw the first question at you. We had featured you in our RD close-up column, and you had an answer that really hit me. And you talked about the importance of retail dietitians owning their health and wellness strategy, which really was the genesis for this webcast. But can you tell us what brought you to that realization that retail dietitians need to own the health and wellness strategy?
Years of frustration. I don't know. I think it was a lot of different things that kind of all came to a head at once. So 2 years ago, I think in 2018, Giant Food went through a restructure. And when we restructured, that's a great thing, right? We were able to become more of a local brand. And it was really good for our associates and for our customers and our employees and for our shoppers. And so that's all great. But at the same time, we got a new boss. So I have a new boss, a new VP of marketing. And, he's got a brand new department, lots of priorities, lots of things happening. And at the same time, we're needing to fit into that new structure, right? So, at the time, we had a lot of independence, a lot of freedom, which is a really great thing because we were able to experiment with different things and figure out what works, what wasn't working. But there wasn't a real clear definition of what our role was. And that's hard because we didn't know who we were to the company. And then what happens is that leaves other people to decide who we are to the company, right? So we would get requests, and I'm sure there are people on this call right now who got these same kind of requests, where maybe the store operations team says, hey, can we get a nutritionist to come and sample the kale salad that's in the deli department? Or can we get a nutritionist to come and hand out the new veggie chips, that we're offering in stores? Or can we get a nutritionist to represent Giant at this event, right? And maybe it's not necessarily a health and wellness event. So we were having these kind of things happen. And at the same time, it was a right time to develop a clear strategy for our teams. So kind of the stars aligned. And, I started realizing that if we were going to make some changes and have the business really understand what we could offer and the value that we could play and what we could contribute to the business, then it was going to be mine to do, right? So
yeah,
I have to take that next step, and I have to figure out how to do that.
Let me ask you a question. With everything that you described, and you started out by saying, it was frustrating, which is why you do. How did you sell it in? How were you able to take the leadership of it and say, okay, enough, guys. We're all over the place. We just don't. You don't understand what we do. How did you get the approval to take ownership of the health and wellness strategy?
Well, I don't know that I needed approval. Quite honestly, I think people, well, no, I think people were waiting for us to put that plan together, right? I just didn't know that. So sometimes you think, oh, I don't know everything about the grocery business, or I don't know everything about leadership or, corporate strategy, or I'm sure that the leadership team has a better sense of what we should be doing because they know grocery. right? And so you make assumptions that people know what we can contribute, and that's not necessarily true. So we have to tell them what we can bring to the business.
Yeah, and Lisa, I think a key piece of this too is, and we see this across the board in retail, right? So you reported into one particular function, then you switched your reporting structure. And then if you don't have that health and wellness strategy in place, suddenly that person, because health and wellness is so personal to people, so even if they don't have a background in it, it becomes personal, and what they think the RD team should do becomes personal. And so I think it's an interesting point about this challenge of, we're often seeing switches in where retail dietitians report. And I think that's another really important reason to have a health and wellness strategy. So when you go to that new VP, you can say, listen, here's our, strategy that's been agreed to, committed to, bought into, here's where we're at against it, all of those kinds of things, right?
For sure. And I think having the new VP and that new structure was only beneficial to us, right? But we still had to figure out where we fit into that structure. Even though we were still reporting to marketing, now we have a brand new department with different goals, and where do we fit? And I think it was time, when all the other departments were writing their strategies, it's time for us to have one too. And I think that was the thing that was always missing. And obviously, looking back, it's like, why didn't we have that? But no one ever really asked for it, or ever really taught us how to do that. Or we didn't even know that that was something that we needed to do until we did it. And then it all came together.
Yeah, that's great.
So
Niki,
wait, before you get to the next question, sorry, Annette. Niki, what's your biggest frustration as it relates to your health and wellness strategy? And did you do the same thing as Lisa, where you just said, hey, we're all over the place, I'm just going to do it?
There was several things happening in the last year, quite frankly, that brought us to this point. So the first thing that happened was I signed up with for the Rising in the Ranks leadership program with Annette and Sherry, because I've been working for the company at that point for 6 years, and felt like, we need to define what we do, same as what Lisa was saying. We need, job descriptions that meet what we currently do 5-6 years in, because we have some dietitians who have longevity with the company, and look forward, because things are changing, and they're changing rapidly. So where do we fit in, some of these areas like e-commerce? So it was all coming to a head at that point. And I learned a lot about, I learned where the opportunities were lying, and it really just started then and continued to grow. And something that I think, Lisa, when you were speaking, made me think of the fact that what we learned was that you start with a strategy, but it will be fluid. And we really learned that this past year with everything changing so rapidly. I mean, in 2019, we were talking strategy and where are we going next? And then 2020, we got flipped upside our heads a little bit, in a good way, though, because this is where the strategy can fluctuate and come into play to become more relevant.
So Niki, an interesting thing also happened for your company this year. Your member group owner bought some additional ShopRite stores, and you've been kind of given additional headcount. So talk about that and what that means for your team and how you're approaching that.
Yeah. So again, another great opportunity to have a strategic plan in place, just because when you have your strategy and you're staying present, but you're looking ahead, now you have a foundation for growth. And so our company did grow significantly in June of 2020. And thankfully, I work for a company that really supports this program, which is great. We're not really in a position where we need to prove ourselves per se, but at the same time, that doesn't mean that we don't need a strategy. We should still be working towards measurements and goals. And, when you're hiring, which we are doing now, it now gives those new hires or those job candidates something to refer back to. Oh, this is what the program is. This is what they do. And then also from a manager position, it allows you to see the opportunities. Okay, we've had a team of 3 of us who work really well together, and the 3 of us have been with the company for at least 5 years working together, which is great. But with that, we know where we need to get to, and we see our strengths, and we also see some opportunities. So when you're ready to hire, now you can focus your hiring needs based on where those opportunities lie. And all of it comes back to, again, the strategy.
So I'd like to build on what both of you have said and ask you both the same question, which is, you're talking about a health and wellness strategy over here. And then over here, there's somebody, and you both sound like you've got, corporate buy-in to what you're doing, but somebody here is doing the corporate strategy. And the corporate strategy could be, in Nikki's case, we want to acquire more stores. In Lisa's case, it might be, we want to push more delivery or curbside pickup or whatever. How do you balance and get the health and wellness strategy to align with the corporate strategy? I guess my first question is, does it have to? And number 2, have you had any issues with, trying to pull those 2 things together? Lisa, why don't you take it first?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. It's not easy to do, but I think it's clicked. I think we figured it out, which I'm excited about. I think you have to start with the corporate strategy. I mean, it's absolutely essential. So don't get me wrong, I am not an expert at writing strategy, but I think I'm starting to really understand how best to magnify my team and how best to get the support that we need. And so I think aligning with the corporate goals is kind of the point. It's the whole point of doing it. That's how you're going to be most effective. That's how you're going to be most relevant if you're supporting the larger business goals. So you got to get your hands on the corporate, strategy for that year. So for us, there were 5 strategic initiatives for 2020. The nutritionist team directly aligned with 2 of them. So if you can build your strategy around the 2 that really, and then you have your kind of side priorities, but they all tie back to the corporate goals. And that's what leadership's talking about. They're talking about it on their operations, meetings. They're talking about in trade meetings of reporting to our global company. That's what's getting all of the attention. That's what's getting all of the funding. And so if you have your own priorities, which are great, like we had great things that we were doing, and many of them are still relevant. But if you're spending all of your time doing things that aren't aligned with the corporate strategy, then what happens is it's a distraction, right? And then it's taking away time from things you should be working on or things that are relevant to the business. But also when you're talking to people about it, they're like, why are you talking about this when all of our energy needs to be going to these other things?
Nikki?
Yeah, I agree completely. I think it can be very easy, and we spoke to this earlier about, we come into this business as dietitians. Some of us don't necessarily have business experience, certainly corporate retail experience. No, we're wellness experts. So it can be easy to fall into a bit of a silo if we are not speaking the same language with our corporate or executive team. And that, again, you might be doing really fantastic things, but how are you going to leverage what you do in every facet of the company to increase the health and wellness presence if you're not meeting corporate goals? I mean, you just have to speak the language and, learn the language first. Speak the language, ask the questions, and get involved in conversations so that everybody can see the opportunity. We're the experts as the dietitians, and we know what people want in terms of wellness offerings. We know that. We know the trends. So that's really great, valuable information to provide to the corporate team in your retailer, because they're not necessarily going to know that. And then where the blending happens is they tell you or share what the goals are in e-commerce or in these other areas that are growing. And then you have the expertise as the dietitian to say, here's where we can leverage wellness in this area. And, of course, promote this new area, e-commerce or whatever, and meet people where we are. And, it all comes back to caring about our shoppers and our people, and of course our bottom line, but first care about the people, provide them the information, and meet them where they are, which again we've learned greatly in 2020, so that we can all get to reach those goals together.
So can I hop in and just follow up on something that Lisa
Sure.
said, because I'm curious to both your opinion on this. So one of the things is, I think historically there's been this long-term perception that dietitians in a traditional setting are always subordinate to doctors, right? That we're not leaders in the healthcare model. And I wonder how much of that I'm curious if you think that perception is still out there when you're going through school and as people enter clinical roles. But I think also there's a question for me do you think that prevents more dietitians from stepping up and just owning the strategy of taking that leadership step?
I think that's a really good question.
And the really good answer is?
Well, the question was directed at Lisa, so I wasn't going to jump in. But
either one of you. Well, first, do you think the perception is still out there?
I think it's generational. So I know a lot of our customers that we call Gladys probably still have that mindset, but maybe our younger customers that we call Jessica may not have that mindset. So we see both. We see both customers. Yeah.
And older customers think the doctor is still the leader in the healthcare environment.
That's been my experience. Yeah.
Do you think dietitians still perceive it though? Do you know what I mean? Do you think within our profession we perceive it?
It depends where you're coming from. I don't know. I can't speak to what students are feeling when they're coming out of school. I was in school like 25 years ago, so I don't know what they're feeling.
Nikki, do you have a thought on that?
I do. I have a couple of thoughts. So I first want to say, I have an extensive. I have 7 years of clinical background. I worked for a local hospital group, and unfortunately, that perception is in hospitals. You know what I mean? Where dietitians are, trying to show what they bring to the table and say, look, I'm writing the orders, not you, doc, when it comes to tube feeds. So we've gotten there. And thankfully, over the past decade, we've gotten to that point where we're seeing more hospitals in clinical being able to write orders. And I've also seen, being that I have a background in both of these areas, a lot of empowerment coming and a lot of support coming towards this area of community nutrition and retail, as opposed to clinical. And I think it is because people are focused on prevention and not treatment. Let's not, let's work on disease prevention rather than treating someone who, well, not rather than, but you know what I mean. Obviously, we'll treat the person who is already having this condition, but the most important piece here is getting people to take care of themselves so that we can prevent that from happening in the future, or at least mitigate that. So I think there's a higher respect, quite frankly, and I think people are recognizing, and even those who are still just now learning that there are dietitians in supermarkets, they're still like, wow, that is a brilliant idea. I mean, meet people where they're making their purchasing decisions and give them the tools that they need to shop better and to cook better and to live better. That's where the magic happens.
I want to go back for a moment to the corporate goals and the health and wellness goals. So it was probably around 25 years ago. I was with a group of CEOs. One was Bill Grice, who at that point was the CEO of Stop and Shop. We were all in Vancouver, and he had a health and wellness moment, if you would, that I think helped change Stop and Shop's culture. I believe it was a relative, I'm not sure who had diabetes. So what Bill did is he decided that they were going to give out free diabetes testing at Stop and Shop stores. And he just thought it was so important. And again, this goes back 25 years ago. So he made that decision. I don't know if at that point they even had an RD on staff. I don't think that they did. And he was sharing. He actually brought some of the letters that customers had sent him before email, so his letters, thanking him because they didn't realize they had diabetes and so on. So for him, there was that wake up moment because diabetes hit him personally in his family life. And we saw, something similar to when Safeway started their whole employee health and wellness program, where they didn't roll it out to consumers first, they rolled it out, to their employees first. Should that be part of how we align health and wellness to corporate strategies, to find those windows and those corporate leaders that might be overweight, that might have diabetes, that might have some personal aspect to this, and try to be able to forge alignment that way? Lisa, you had said that, out of the 5 pillars, 2 of them could align. Is that a good way to get buy-in from your corporate leaders, is to make it really personal for them?
Certainly, we've had experiences where we've supported someone in leadership in a personal way. And, just like with our customers, you get great testimonials out of that and things that you can share. I don't know that those testimonials carry the same weight as what we're talking about here. We're talking about, metrics and supporting the business goals. So on a personal level, yes, they're gonna love the nutritionist, they're gonna love the dietitian, they're gonna, share that with other people that they know. But I don't know that that leads to really the weight of what we're trying to do, where we're trying to embed healthy living into every function of the business, across the business. I think that's not a bad place to start. I don't think that captures everything that we need to do.
Nikki?
Yeah, I would agree completely. I mean, I think it depends on who your audience is, for sure. Because, you hear stories about people being all for health and wellness, people, maybe being for it, but not really getting how it fits into the corporate strategy. So it depends on the individual, and but I think the moral of the story, and as it pertains to this question, is know your audience, know who you're working with, and I think we learn that best at retail. That's just my personal opinion. Is you're dealing with and working with so many different personalities, and here you are, the dietitian, who is in a very different, unique position. So we have to meet them where they are, and in some cases that does mean connecting on a personal level. In other cases, it means connecting on that more business level, and in other cases, depending on what you're trying to accomplish, that's stocking a shelf. It's whatever we can do to show that we're part of this industry, and we're all in it together, and we all have the same goals at the end of the day.
Have you ever gone up to that overweight deli manager and say, hey, let's spend some time together. I'd like you to lose 50 pounds.
Yeah, that goes against our philosophy entirely. We're not the food police, and that's not our role here at Giant. So that's not the way our team would approach things at all. We do it a little differently.
Nikki?
And 100%. So just to clarify, the individuals would come to us, but we do things to make sure that our team members in the stores know that we're here, so that we support them, we support their health, and when they're ready, come to us.
So, your dietetic curriculum includes very little business education. Now that you're both taking on more corporate roles and strategies, how have you gained the experience? And, what did you find in writing a health and well-being strategy to be the most difficult?
I can go first. I once I knew I had to write the strategy, the first thing I did was ask for help. And that's always where I start. So literally, help me, who can help me? So I went to our strategy and innovation team, and to the director of strategy and innovation, I said, tell me everything I need to know. I'm new at this. I have no problem saying what I know and what I don't know. I've never done this before. I want it to be really good. I want it to be really impactful. So, I know my team. I know what's worked. I know what hasn't worked in the past. I know our value. I believe in what we do. How do I put this on paper, and how do I align it with the larger business? So we met for every week for about an hour, and then for about 4 weeks. And then after that, we did a couple of check-ins just to see how things were progressing. The second thing I did was I got my hands on every department strategy that I could, and I read them all. And some of them were fantastic, and some of them were terrible. And, I was able to steal bits of those strategies in terms of how they were laid out or the words they were using. And so it just helped me to see what other functions in the business were doing. I knew I needed a really strong deck. So I don't know about you, but at Giant Food, nothing happens unless it's on PowerPoint slides. So it doesn't even exist until you put it on the deck. So you need a really strong, presentation. It needs to have strong executive storytelling, which again is not my gift. So I said, help me do that. How do I do that? And so I think just, being vulnerable, telling people what you know, what you don't know, being willing to kind of put yourself out there and admit when you don't know something is really important in the beginning, because that's how you learn. If you pretend like you know what you're doing, I don't feel like that gets you really anywhere. So being vulnerable. If you're not familiar with Brene Brown, she kind of got me through, my first year of being vulnerable in that setting and a new role with a new boss. So I think that, checking out Brene Brown on vulnerability. She has a podcast called Unlocking Us. Are any of you familiar with it?
Yep.
I recommend you check out, I'm not allowed to curse on this podcast, but there is an episode that's called FFT. It's a phrase that I use all the time. It's talking about when you're doing something for the first time. Okay, so I use
the phrase
FFT. It's called the friendly first time, but maybe not friendly.
Okay.
This concept of, you're doing something for the first time, and give yourself a little bit of grace and ask for help and get through it. And next time you'll be a lot better at it.
So Niki, before I let you answer, Lisa, when you put together that deck and you're in that room, who did you have to present to? And what was the thing that you never expected to be asked?
Okay, so yeah, this is really interesting. So first I shared, of course, with my boss, then we socialize it with the president of the company. And before then it goes to the operating committee or the leadership team. So you make sure the president of the company has seen it first. And I was surprised when he said, yeah. And it was so interesting because when I was writing the strategy director said to me, you'll know you have it when you put it on paper and people are like, yeah, of course. So you do this work and you struggle through it and you put it all on paper, and then somebody looks at it and they're like, yeah, good to go. And you expect so much more than that, but that's really what it is. That's where you kind of on the sweet spot.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Niki, what about you?
Yes. So it's a difficult task. And I think from the start of it, like any big project, it feels very overwhelming. But my strategy for writing the strategy was kind of start with the where are you trying to get to, and then kind of work backwards, if that makes sense. And in terms of working with my corporate team, for sure. I mean, we had some areas that were pretty well defined with their strategy and some that were not quite yet. So this was really when we started in 2019 was more of a total company endeavor. And then with our, with all of the changes happening, it really started to come to fruition, with the stores increasing. So yeah, I mean, it was a lot, but again, start with what you foresee, work backwards. Maybe I felt it necessary to include some of my team members, my dietitians, as well, and their input, because, you know, I'm not on the front lines in the stores often anymore, and they are. So, and they actually really have great insight for me that isn't recorded in reporting about the customer base and ROI. So I felt like their input was necessary, as well as, you know, we included our operational staff, our president, the marketing team. So pertinent people, so that it could be a joint effort. And so that we didn't, you know, if there were any questions, I was happy to, you know, kind of explore and ask questions too myself. Every question had another question. And that's part of the learning experience for someone who's writing a strategic plan for the first time. And I think Lisa said it as well. Just, you know, there are, you know, you gotta understand, you gotta ask the questions. Don't pretend like you know things already, even if you've been with the company for this long. There's so many, retail is so layered. So there is totally a lot to know.
So both of you have these strategy plans. You've worked on them. They are set. You both got yeses. Here we go. And COVID-19 happens. How did you have to change your strategy based on COVID-19? Or did you have to change your strategy at all?
We had to change parts of our strategy for sure. I mean, all of our services moved online, and we had to figure that out, and we had to figure it out quickly. I felt really responsible for my team and making sure that we still stayed relevant during COVID-19, not knowing how long it would last. And I wanted to make sure that even though we couldn't be in stores, we were still connected to the business in every way possible. So we quickly pivoted. We did as much as we could. We came up with new programs, but it still was all within the structure that we had laid out and the goals we were going to accomplish for the year.
So the strategy remained the same, just some of the tactics and the
Tactics change.
Sure.
change.
Makes
Niki,
sense.
what about you?
Sure.
That's what I was going to say. I mean, the mission, the vision, all of that stays the same. You just add to what you're actually doing to get there, or change it, modify it. And again, we saw it. I mean, we had this on our radar for quite some time, wanting to pivot to virtual more, just because we saw this benefit of, you know, it's obvious. We're already here. We are in a very virtual tech environment now, and we're only getting busier, which leads us back to tech. So this really provided us that opportunity to pivot in that landscape and to increase our presence. This is my catchphrase: increase your presence without physically being present, because, you know, that's the beautiful thing. I mean, if you want to be everywhere with company, or you want health and wellness to be everywhere within your company and within your stores, then, you know, what better way to do it than to utilize the virtual landscape. So so it definitely changed some things, but at the core of it, that remained the same. And in fact, in some ways, it kind of made it it kind of strengthened, I think, our offerings to get to that strategy, to reach those big pillar goals.
What was probably the hardest thing to do as you both moved into more virtual, more technology? Were you on your own with your iPhone? Did your IT department help? You know, what was the hardest thing to do?
The hardest thing to do was to battle kind of the corporate timelines that are often required to get something done, but knowing we needed to do things quickly. So we had to do things in a way that didn't really rely on other teams to help get it done. So if we were going to figure out how to move all of our classes onto a new platform, you know, we got to figure that out ourselves. And luckily, I have an amazing team, and I have people who are really good at that. So you kind of rely on the gifts that everybody's bringing to the table during times like that. and, oh, you're really great at social media and you're really great at doing radio interviews. And, here are the things we can do right now on our own and who can take what and who really shines in those.
And Niki?
Yeah, so we had a unique challenge because of the fact that we grew our company during the pandemic. There were a lot of new people coming together. So we had a lot more of that, what Lisa just said, learning what people's strengths were and who to utilize for what. And yeah, in the very beginning, it really was looking inward and looking at the three of our team to say, what can we offer without the support first, and go from there. I mean, I had one dietitian who was going home, or she was home and she was filming little clips of her making a meal and then sending it to her kids who were off in different states, and they were editing. And I mean, it was just like became this fun thing. Like, how can we get creative together? But, we also recognized with this, with hiring, we're looking for somebody with really strong experience in social media and marketing because, we feel that we could be better. And that's, I think, a really good thing to say, because if you don't see those opportunities, then how will you ever grow and become your best? So that's where we're at. But I have to give credit to my team, and even the Wakefern staff has provided us with really great best practices on leading social media events and virtual events. So we've had some support, but I would definitely agree with Lisa, like the time frame of it just kind of catapulting us and not necessarily being there or being ready for it quite yet. While it was a great opportunity, we had to move fast, and we had to learn from our mistakes. So we continue to do so.
So Lisa and Niki, I'm curious, as you guys have gone through the process of developing a health and wellness strategy for your dietitian teams, has it gained you greater visibility with leadership of your company? Just because you've gone through the process, you've been strategic about it.
Yes.
Definitely.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
It's been a great year. We've had the opportunity to be part of every part of the organization. I mean, and our program's a little different. We don't do a lot of we don't do medical nutrition therapy. Yep. So, right now we're focusing on a lot of online classes, associate wellness. We launched an associate wellness challenge, which we've never done before. We were part of the associate business meeting where I was able to talk about how Giant cares about healthy living for our associates. That has never happened before. So we're starting to embed. We're not siloed anymore. We're not over here doing these great things. We're really supporting the foundation of the business throughout every department now.
That's awesome.
And what I loved is both of your reactions to Annette's question. And Lisa, you going like this and stuff like that.
It's been a long time coming.
And if we look back, the premise of RDBA is to give you the tools to do exactly what you're doing, to really be able to get better exposure, not to be siloed, to have everybody really understand what you can do and what you can bring to the party, that it's not limited to store tours, that it's not limited to, doing demos and things like that. So I can really congratulate, both of you for doing that, and the smile, Lisa, that was on your face when Annette asked you that question. I loved it. So Annette, ask another question like that. I want to see.
Well,
I want to see it happen again.
I mean, I think a really great question for both of you is, what advice would you give to other retail dietitians about developing a health and wellness strategy, the importance of it, or how to do it? But what advice would you give now that you've done this and had great success?
Yeah, and I have to say, I still think we're at the very beginning. There's so much potential. There's so many things we want to do, things we haven't been able to do, but I feel really hopeful that we're on the right path, and I'm just really excited to do the work to get that done. I have a couple of tips to share with everybody. I was thinking about that this morning. I think it's important to have a champion within the organization, somebody with whom you can be really vulnerable and make sure you can say, I know this, but I don't know this. I don't understand how this works. And someone who understands how the organization works and can pull you into things and believes in what you do. So I think having a champion and mentor is really important. I also think it's important when you're getting started to just get involved in everything. I had the position where I was going to say yes to everything, which I know you're not supposed to do, but to get started in order to figure out what we could do and what really would stick, we just said yes to everything. So if a department asked us to do something, we said yes, we figured out what worked, what didn't. Was that something we should keep doing? And get involved in everything. So, if there was a financial lunch and learn to review the P&L report for the quarter, my team's there and we're asking questions. Invite other functions to your meetings, have people present and just talk about what they do and how it might intersect with healthy living. Just make connections, get involved in the business resources groups within your organization. Just get involved, get to know people so they understand who you are, not just on a professional level, but on a personal level, and build those relationships. The last thing I'll say is, make sure you strategize. You share your strategy horizontally with all of the different departments. So once you have your strategy, you have to go on a roadshow and you have to tell what it is. Because if they don't know what it is, they can't support you. And once they know what you're doing, then they're going to make connections that you would not have made. So they'll see, oh, you should be in this meeting, or has Lisa been part of this? You need to call Lisa and make sure she knows about this. And they'll do some of that work for you to make sure that you're always connected. And I know that was my last tip, but I do have one more, and it's to get ahead on timelines. It's so, so, so important to be thinking about 6 months, a year out from now, because what's happening next month doesn't matter. The business is planning right now for Easter. So, forget about Halloween, forget about Christmas, forget about January. We're planning Easter now. So if you're over here planning what you're going to do for this holiday, with your team, that's kind of irrelevant to the business because they're talking about, April next year right now. So it's really important to start thinking ahead.
Niki, what would you add?
Yeah, so I was going to say relationships as well. I have to just agree because Lisa did such a great job answering that question, and then bringing your strategy on the road for sure, because everybody's got to hear it and see how excited you are about it too, because that helps to get buy-in. But I was going to say just, inclusion. I think to a degree we really need to hear from people that are in the stores. We need to hear from our dietitians and what they're seeing in the store, because that is where it all translates. We can think of all of these great things as managers, but we have to know how realistic and how logistically is this going to work in the store and with our customers. How receptive are they going to be? And a really big one for me is just think outside the box. And, you get there, I think, from first you have to have the good knowledge base and understanding of what everybody does. And then, of course, continue to ask questions because you don't want to be that person coming in without the knowledge and then thinking outside the box. Then it's like, whoa. But yeah, I mean, for me, it really was a year or so ago. I was saying things, about having dietitians in focus areas rather than having them all do the same thing. And, that's finally starting to come to fruition. And I think it was back then it was like a really kind of moment. But eventually when I mapped it all out and presented, this opportunity to play on our dietitian strengths in different areas, allowing them to thrive and also take these different areas, whether it be merchandising or community outreach, or, taking them to these different areas and taking them to the next level. I think that's going to really enhance our output and how we get to meet our end goals. So think outside the box. Don't be afraid. Come up with new ideas, because that also will put you at this, this other level, I think, because, they're not afraid to take risks. They're not afraid to go big. And we're in a time period where all of that matters. We need to be coming up with new ideas.
So we have time for one last question, and like you both to answer it. Look into your crystal ball. 5 years from now, what is the one thing that you want to accomplish for yourself, for your stores, for your customers? One thing. Niki, why don't you go first?
Oh, goodness. What do we want? We really are working towards just when the customer walks in the door, they think health and wellness, they see health and wellness, and meal solutions. That's huge for us. I mean, how do we get dinner on the table and have it be something that we feel really good about? And that needs to be felt and seen in every area, whether actually in brick and mortar in every department, but also most importantly on e-commerce. And if I'm a customer shopping with a condition and I'm looking for particular foods, but I'm not coming into the store, I'm only ordering online. How do we do that? And how do we make that user experience super simple so that it doesn't, there aren't barriers at any level? So,
That's not one thing. That's not one thing. I want one thing from you that you're going to say right now that you're going to commit to, that's going to be reality in 5 years. One thing.
I am going to the beginning. Yeah. Go ahead, Niki. I think you said it at the start, but go ahead.
I want health and wellness in every area of our company and our stores.
Lisa, one thing.
I want healthy living to be embedded into our merchandising plans. And I hope it doesn't take 5 years.
Me too.
So I'd like to do that next year.
Well, Lisa, thank you. Niki, thank you. Obviously, Annette, thank you for everything that you do every single day for our DBA. And thank you for joining us. Make sure you go to retaildietitians.com. You can see previous episodes of our Facebook Live, or you could watch it on Facebook Live. And we're always open to new topics to really help you manage what you're doing. And we've got two perfect examples of people here with us who have done great things and really raised the whole awareness of what a retail dietitian should be doing at retail. So thanks for joining us, and thank you guys.
Thank you guys. Have a good day.
Bye guys. Thanks, Lisa and Niki.
Bye.
Thank you.